if you are abused when you're young, your brain develops faster than if you weren't.
I think there's something in that. Now, I don't think we know that for certain, because a lot of the research, I mean, let's face it, the main way of proving whether an intervention has had an effect is to do a randomised controlled trial. And thank goodness we don't do randomised controlled trials in which we abuse kids.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll never be certain. But I think there is something in that. I remember years ago reading a paper where someone talked about pseudo-maturity in abused kids. And at the time I thought it was a pseudo-maturity, but I now wonder, I mean, it's actually something I'm quite interested to try and find out, because I've come across, like, I can think of one young guy that I know who got a diagnosis of DSED and has actually had quite a lot of problems with his indiscriminate behaviour. He's an adopted guy, and I know he's got a wonderful family, and he'll be okay. But I remember him as a kid. He already had a gardening business by the age of 11.
That's what I'm talking. So a lot of, and it comes back to that, or the CEO kind of business people, ultra successful. A lot of the time, because they've come from broken homes, they've had to mature faster.
Yeah.
Because if they want out the situation, they've got to figure it out. And they kind of come off the back of that. A lot of them then have jobs when they're 15 years old, and they work their way up, and they work like shit, and they make sure that they don't fall back into the poverty that they were in prior. I think there's something to that.
I think there's something to that. I've been doing this lecture recently, just a couple of times, but just to be deliberately provocative, that I've called Life's a Bitch and Then You Thrive. Because I think there's something in that, and it does seem to be, you kind of alluded to it earlier, I think there's it is almost like a tale of two halves. It's like, I'm sure it's not as simple as that, but obviously there are some people who've been abused and neglected who end up with terrible, complex, overlapping mental health problems, and they end up and can end up in addictions, etc. And then at the other extreme, you do seem to sometimes meet people who've had terrible experiences and who are just extraordinary. I mean, there's an amazing book called Ootlin. I don't know how... I haven't seen it talked about much. It should be on the bestseller list. It's one of the most incredible books I've read in the last couple of years. And it's a memoir by a woman called Jenny Fagan.
What was it called again?
Ootlin.
Ootlin.
Ootlin. Ootlin.
I'll get that.
She's from the east of the country. But she was in the care system from quite young, really, really had a terrible, terrible time, both before she went into care, and then unfortunately she had a really, really negative experience in the care system as well. She's got her PhD, she's a really successful writer. She's also written an amazing book of fiction called The Panopticon. I would really recommend that as well. I mean, brilliant writer. And you know, but reading Ootlin and reading her experience, you really get a sense of that. You know, she just really, really had to learn how to look after herself. But I think there's another factor that kind of comes into this, and clearly Jenny Fagan has a brain the size of a planet. Do you know? I've never had the great pleasure of being in the same room as her. We've actually corresponded a bit. I'd love to meet her. But she's clearly hugely intelligent. And I think sometimes kids who are exceptionally bright and have difficult experiences, sometimes who are all, I have no idea what Jenny's neurodevelopmental profile is, and goodness knows, I'm not suggesting anything about that, but you know, sometimes who are also neurodivergent are actually able to really pull themselves out, become mature, and be really exceptional. And I think part of that becoming really exceptional is about finding people who can help. So, you know, often those people who are really, and I mean, I wasn't joking when I said, is Elon Musk successful? Because Elon Musk is doing a hell of a lot of damage to the world at the moment. So, you know, what is success? But somebody like Jenny Fagan and many other examples, Lem Sissay, for example, the poet, he's also written an amazing memoir of being in the care system. You know, these are extraordinary people. They've been successful in their friendships, their relationships, and often what's really helped them has been meeting people who can actually help them get a different view of the world. It's often a positive relationship. Sometimes it's a positive relationship with a foster carer or adoptive parent. Sometimes it's later in life and it's been lucky enough to meet a romantic partner who
helps,
who really helps. And I don't know that they necessarily help. It's not that that person is there to fix you, not at all. It's just perhaps that they give you a different filter on the world.
Yeah, or if you didn't have let's say a father or a mother figure, they could potentially feed into that a little bit.
I don't know. I think that can be a negative thing. I mean, you don't want to be kind of, and I think in a romantic relationship, you want there to be inequality in the partnership. But I just think sometimes it's about people who are really expert in PTSD, and that's not my kind of area of expertise, but obviously it skirts the area that I'm interested in and it is really interesting. They sometimes talk about if you develop post-traumatic stress disorder, say you'd been, suddenly your country went to war, and so you'd had a good upbringing, you'd had a nice childhood, and then suddenly the world is traumatic. Then it can actually change your view. It can change your kind of internal schema. You could have, at the age of 10 in your kind of happy place, be thinking people are nice, the world's a good place, generally things will work out for me. And then before you know it, war has happened, you've got post-traumatic stress disorder, and your internal schema could be actually people are quite nasty, the world is not a good place, and things are probably going to go wrong. Now, probably neither of those things are completely true. It's somewhere in the middle. And I just wonder whether if someone who's had a very kind of traumatic upbringing meets someone with that first view, meets someone who's got that kind of sunny view of life, maybe it just makes you come into the middle a bit and realise, maybe my schema are somewhere in the middle.
It rubs off on you a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no evidence for that. I'm just speculating.
Well, you think so? I think that people make them, I don't want to say mistake, because oftentimes people can take that out of context, but people make the, when they're dating specifically, they find someone that's similar to themselves. Mm-hmm. And actually, a lot of the time, that's not a good thing. Because if they're the same as you, then you can't grow together because you have the same weaknesses.
Yes.
And a lot of the time, I see this a lot with, my friends are all starting to pair off and get married. And a lot of the time, they find someone that's either very similar to them or very similar to their mother.
Yes.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
It's almost like you choose someone based on what you know.
Or women find someone who's very similar to their father. I've noticed that as well. Yeah.
Why? So is that just because is that comfortability? Is that
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Well, there is actually this genetic phenomenon called assortative mating. So it has actually been shown. It's not my expertise either, but I remember being at a seminar and we were talking about assortative mating, which is where people are attracted to someone who's similar. And now my husband is a white American.
He's different.
And I was about to snort and say, you're joking. My husband's completely different. And then I realised me and my husband have got identically sized feet and hands. To the extent they keep nicking my trainers. So it's actually true.
Yeah.
And actually, in some ways, our facial features look quite similar too. So there is something in that.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And we also, I think it's been shown, again, this is just stuff I've read, but it's been shown that we do tend to go for someone who's sort of around the same level of intelligence, I think. And I don't know whether that's also true of kind of social intelligence, social intelligence, emotional intelligence. I don't know, but, I think we do tend to be attracted by people who are like us in many ways.
I wonder if, leading back to the kind of childhood trauma thing, I wonder if neurotypical people marry into other neurotypical people, whereas someone with ADHD would marry someone with ADHD, and that then becomes an issue with the child. Not an issue. Issue is not the word, but yeah.
Yeah. I've wondered about that, and I don't know whether there's any research on that. But you do. It's really, really common to have families where there's lots and lots of neurodivergence, and whether that's just because these genes do get passed down anyway, or whether assortative mating has a role in that as well, I don't know. Certainly. So my husband has a diagnosis of ADHD as well. I hope he wouldn't mind me saying that. So out of the 4 of us in our family, 3 of us have got a diagnosis. My daughter doesn't, and I think she's got a lot of the traits, but none of the problems at all.
She got lucky.
Yeah, she's got the high energy. Do you know what I mean? She can multitask like crazy. So I think there's something in that. There is something about these things kind of clustering in families, and it maybe is partly because we're attracted to each other. I mean, certainly one of the things I've always loved about my husband is, I realise now it's impulsivity. We make quick decisions. I remember when we bought a house, you were just talking earlier about, buying a house and then having to furnish it. We were exactly the same. And I remember really fun, so long ago, but it was really fun. We're like, oh my God, we've got to get a fridge and we've got to get a freezer. And we just measured the spaces. We went to like 2 shops and within 15 minutes we bought them. That was it, done, tick. And just being able to do that kind of quick stuff, we don't muck about. We don't get freaked out if something doesn't work out on our holiday. We just find another adventure. And I love that about Steve. And I realise, looking back, that some of the things that I love about him are actually our ADHD traits.
They're because my partner at the moment, she's not been diagnosed, but every single trait points to it. Like every single trait. She'll leave stuff everywhere. She, like, to a degree, worse than me. And I do think that part of the reason I was probably attracted was because I kind of understood it. And I think that probably goes across the board. I do then think it would probably relate back to if you have 2 people with ADHD having a child that also has ADHD, it's complicated.
Yeah. In some ways it's complicated, but in other ways it's just really good fun.
Well, that's a good view.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, me and Jason have talked about this a lot. Like Jason, my autistic colleague, we shared an office for 2 years. And so funny because in some ways we are so different because, I sort of your typical kind of buzzy, loud person with ADHD. He's quiet. He's, he likes his routine, and it was actually really good for us. I mean, I think I'm sure he would say the same. I think we're friends as well as colleagues. We got on really, really well, but we really maybe this is why we had to really work to accommodate each other. I think we both. Different. Yeah, and I think we both really learned a lot. And I think because we were interested in neurodivergence in terms of our research as well, I think both went on a bit of a journey together in realising that there's a real strength in working with people who are very different. There's an amazing book called, I'm going to really struggle to remember what it's called now. Matthew Barzun, I think it's called. Oh, I can't remember. How annoying. It's written by a guy who was an advisor to Barack Obama. But anyway, he's talking about how, it'll come back to me later, how important it is in teams to have diversity. And he said, look, we could talk about gender diversity and we could talk about race, but that's not really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about cognitive diversity. And so in our team at where I work at the University of Glasgow, we've got a big team, there's more than 20 of us, and we really try to think about neurodivergence. We really try to acknowledge the fact that some of us in the team like to be noisy and chatty, and some of us need the exact opposites. How do we accommodate that? Because I really believe in science, and I think in a lot of life, actually, you get the best ideas when you get those different styles of thinking together. But I suspect in families, people usually want to be a bit cozier, so they maybe go for people that are a bit more similar.
Yeah.
But for me, I think in the world, out there in the world, I think it really helps us if we can actually find ways of getting on with people who are extremely different from us.
If you guys enjoyed that clip, please do me a huge favour before you go and head over to our Into the Mind podcast official page where we have the raw, uncut Into the Mind podcast, and hit that subscribe button. And the more subscribers we get, the more incredible guests we can get on the show. I really appreciate you guys for watching. Thank you so much. And I'll see you all real soon.